Well, the plot thickens in the Las Vegas road rage case, resulting in the death of a 44-year-old Tammy Meyers, a mother. And perhaps road rage doesn't apply here. That's part of what this case might be about. The defense team for the 19-year-old accused of killing Meyers is asking for a gunshot residue test on her body. They want to determine if Tammy Meyers or someone next to her fired a gun before she died. The results potentially supporting a self-defense argument for the 19-year-old suspect. Let's bring in Heather Hansen, trial attorney, and John Manuelian, a criminal defense attorney. And here's the twist that we just learned, that they're not going to allow the test because the body has already been released to the family, Heather, so it can't be done. What do you think the impact is of that?
It could have a huge impact, Jenna. What happens in cases like this when evidence is ruined by one party or the other side, and here the defense, can ask for what's called an adverse inference. This means that the jury will ultimately be instructed that this evidence would have hurt the prosecution side and helped the defense side. So here, it may actually even be better that this test was never done for the defense, because done or not, they can argue that the evidence would have been helpful to them.
Interesting. Let me ask John, with your experience in criminal defense law, do you agree with Heather on that this could actually be helpful to the defense because they can't do the test?
Well, I'm going to tell you that I'm going to respectfully disagree. I think they're going to need to show that Tammy Meyers may have been under the influence of drugs. That was the whole purpose of issuing the subpoenas, to determine what her toxicology levels were. And if they did discard the body, or if this now evidence is destroyed, they could actually file for dismissal of the charges on a motion to dismiss the evidence based on destruction of exculpatory evidence. Now, the reality is the judge may not grant that, but again, it's a point for the defense, and it's something that they're going to use in this case.
So in plain language, how significant do you think it is, John, to this case as of today?
Well, first of all, the gunshot residue, I think, is very important also. I think they need to determine whether or not the shots came from the car. If that happened, that would be actually more important than the coroner's report, but both are equally as important.
So, Heather, one of the reasons why I said we shouldn't maybe call this a road rage case is that we don't actually know if that is the case. This story continues to turn and turn and turn. There is a point of dispute, though, for this 19-year-old suspect. According to his attorneys, when police talked to him inside the home before they arrested him, the police knew that he was smoking marijuana. And the lawyer's argument is, well, they should have stopped him from doing that, and anything that he told to police at that time on the phone should be thrown out. What do you think about that?
I think, again, the defense is really coming on strong here, and they have a strong argument. If it's one thing if a defendant has been smoking marijuana and the police don't know about it, but here they're actually alleging that he was smoking marijuana, they knew about it, and they encouraged it. If the defense is able to actually support that contention and the judge buys it, there is a good chance that that confession, and we don't know that it was a confession, but that's sort of what I'm inferring here, that information will be thrown out. It's surprising to me, Jenna, that in a case that has been so questionable from the very beginning, and a kid who doesn't seem to have a lot of support, that such great attorneys have put such a strong defense on from day one.
Interesting. And you're right. As we get the pictures of both of these families, especially for this 19-year-old, we're not saying to be sympathetic, John, but there's a big question again about what actually happened. As far as hard evidence, one of the pieces of hard evidence that we have are some casings around his home, not the Meyers home. There's also casings there. But there's a big question about who fired shots and where. Why is that relevant to this case?
Well, I think it's relevant to this case because it shows who the aggressor was, who the initial aggressor was. But I think the bigger question is, why didn't Tammy Meyers, when she went home, why did she get her son and get the gun to go after these people? Why didn't she just call the police? Because if she did, she may be alive today. And that is a lesson we all learned. Do not confront your aggressor. Let law enforcement handle these types of matters so these types of results don't happen.
And a quick final thought from you, Heather. Apparently, the 19-year-old suspect went to friends and was talking about that he got the better, I'm paraphrasing, of these kids that were following him. And that raises the question, apparently, in court about whether or not both parties knew who each other were, that we're assuming that. But what do you think those statements mean? Do you think that was premeditated by him to throw people off, or do you think perhaps he didn't know who was in the car?
I think there's just as good a likelihood that he didn't know who was in the car. But Jenna, I don't know how important that's going to be. You know, in any case, witnesses' renditions of the facts are not as important as the forensics. Here it's going to come down to what those casings outside of his home meant, what the casings outside of her home meant, and if they're going to be able to put forward this argument of self-defense.
It's a very bizarre story. Again, the story that we told in initially, not the right story.
No.
We're learning, and it's a good lesson as far as that. Heather and John, great to have you both. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Jenna.
Thank you, Jenna.